Sensation, Europe is marching with its army straight towards Moscow. The final blow that will finally crush Putin. Poland has rolled out nuclear weapons. Everything was leading up to this. Ukraine has provided a corridor. Drones have cut all of Russia's connections with Hungary. And on top of that, the Kremlin is crying out about the loss of Crimea. The Scandinavian countries have elevated our defense industry to the skies. Could it really be that the final word belongs to the armed forces of Ukraine after all? All this and more in our episode Hellpoint. Europe is on the brink of hostilities. The Baltic countries are leading. France is gathering an army. Germany is fortifying itself. It's hard to believe this. At this very moment, the continent has lined up its forces to strike at the Russian Federation. Moscow is visibly nervous, but it keeps trying to intimidate with all its remaining strength. A major strike could happen at any moment now. From which direction will it come? And will Russia go all in, throwing all its forces against a united Europe? More on this in just a moment.
Europe is actively preparing for war with Russia.
Most EU country leaders are convinced that the scale of today's conflict will inevitably extend beyond Ukraine. After all, Putin has no intention of stopping. After Kiev, he wants to take Warsaw, Vilnius, Berlin, and Paris.
And then, after our triumphant visits to Paris and Berlin, we will decisively write our names on the crumbling ruins of Washington, D.C.
And such statements from the Kremlin about a possible invasion of Europe are no longer considered empty talk in the West.
EU countries are actively preparing for a potential, or rather a very real, invasion.
Moscow sees itself at war with the West as a whole, and that also includes NATO. Russia will see weakness as an invitation to go even further and to test NATO's unity and determination to defend every inch of its territory.
The Baltic countries were the first to demonstrate their determination to resist the Kremlin occupiers, not just with words, but with actions.
Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia are actively preparing for a possible invasion, bringing their military units to combat readiness and strengthening defensive lines on the border with the Russian Federation.
All NATO countries that border Russia or Belarus are coming to the conclusion that, in order to deter a possible offensive, measures are needed that until recently were considered unacceptable. Along the entire length of the border with the Russian Federation, anti-tank hedgehogs, trenches, rows of barbed wire, and so-called dragon's teeth are appearing.
It even gets seemingly to the point of absurdity. But only in this way can resistance be mounted.
Against Putin's army. More unusual methods of defense are also emerging.
In Lithuania, they once drained a swamp on the border with Belarus.
And now they say the swamp needs to be refilled so that Russian tanks can't get through. And overall, they're right.
Meanwhile, France is preparing not to defend itself, but to receive the wounded.
A lot of wounded.
Official Paris is urgently inspecting hospitals to see if they can accommodate military personnel.
The French authorities believe
that a potential and unprovoked Kremlin attack on the sovereign nations of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, commonly known as the North Atlantic Alliance, is a serious and growing concern that could realistically happen in the near future. In a remarkably short period, specifically within just 6 months from now, they are diligently preparing to receive a substantial influx of personnel. This includes an estimated 50,000 military personnel alone, all expected to arrive within this half-year time frame. This significant undertaking translates to an astonishing daily arrival rate of between 100 and 250 individuals every single day, consistently, for the entire duration of the 6-month period.
At the same time, the French authorities are actively preparing their air force for a possible invasion.
Like most European countries, France is recruiting and urgently training more and more new volunteers.
French society takes a very strong and, so to speak, appropriate attitude toward the enemies of the future.
From a statistical point of view, for example, many surveys are conducted among young people, and according to various estimates, the overwhelming majority, well, not overwhelming, but more than half of young people are already signing up, ready to serve in the military, even volunteering for this military service.
But in Germany, there are no lines of people eager to join the Bundeswehr.
The local authorities admit that they are already experiencing a shortage of personnel. We need about 50 to 60,000 more soldiers than we currently have in the regular armed forces. Of course, the question arises, will that be enough?
I can only repeat, a mandatory draft is out of the question for us right now, as long as we don't have the capacity.
This concerns barracks and the training of soldiers.
Against this backdrop, anxiety is growing among the population in Europe, while Estonians are anxiously awaiting new provocations in the air from Russian MiGs. Poles, on whose territory Putin's drones and Shaheds have already repeatedly flown into from Ukraine, are hastily fleeing the country.
More and more of them are looking for housing abroad.
According to Western real estate agencies, residents of Gdansk, Warsaw, and Krakow are actively relocating, in particular to Portugal and Spain.
In the latter, the number of housing applications from Poles has at least tripled over the past month.
Only 30% of respondents said they would like to leave Poland in the event of an attack.
70% are ready to stay.
But what is the real number, actually?
Of course, we will see then if such an invasion begins, or if shelling starts. The fact that Poles have long been buying apartments in Spain, far from a possible attack on their country, is already well known. Meanwhile, the Polish authorities are actively investing money in their own bomb shelters.
For many Polish cities, is the modernization and outfitting of these shelters almost a top priority?
The country's security agencies have ordered nearly 4,000 buildings to be inspected for suitability as shelters. The Republic's government has also allocated 5 billion zlotys.
But as for the Germans, in the event of an attack from Russia, not only are they not planning to flee anywhere, they aren't even in a hurry to go to municipal bomb shelters.
In Germany, demand for building private bunkers has surged.
And it's all because of the same fear of a Russian attack on NATO countries. Thus, since January 2025, the number of requests for designing and building bunkers in Germany has increased by half, according to Bild.
There have been especially many applications for personal bunkers from Germans after the latest provocations by Putin.
And the most popular among EU citizens today are private, medium-sized bunkers with an area of 30 square meters.
The cost of each of these is approximately 30 to 50,000 euros.
Shock. Poland has made up its mind. It will come down to the nuclear button, and that's when the real chaos begins.
The power of weapons is now measured differently. Russia has trapped itself, and new mega weapons are rewriting the rules of the game. It's time for Putin to pack his bags. NATO recognizes Ukraine's strength, and priorities on Europe's military chessboard are shifting.
Don't miss everything about this coming up next.
The new nuclear axis of Europe.
Poland is ready to become a country with its own nuclear shield.
As the President of the Republic of Poland, I believe that Poland should participate in nuclear sharing.
It should have its own nuclear energy, civil and military capabilities.
According to Nawrocki, on this issue, Poland is counting on the support of France. For Warsaw, this is not just an alliance, but a way to obtain exactly the kind of weapon that will change the rules of the game in Europe.
Such a move is a challenge both to Moscow and to Brussels.
This statement by the Polish president came shortly after an unprecedented attack by Russian drones on Poland.
And although this time dozens of drones were reconnaissance drones,
which did not pose a direct military threat, many in Warsaw continue to expect that the attack will be repeated.
then next time they could be strike drones.
To strengthen nuclear cooperation, Poland is preparing to sign the Nansky Treaty. This document is intended to deepen cooperation in the fields of defense and security.
And although Nawrocki admits that it is still too early to talk about this, his position is clear.
Poland intends to participate in nuclear sharing.
The fact that in Poland,
they are starting to consider participating in receiving nuclear weapons from their allies demonstrates the level of security concerns that exist in Central European countries due to the ongoing Russian-Ukrainian war and the uncertainty among Western leaders about how they can actually stop this war in the foreseeable future and counter Russia's ambitions,
which is actively supported by Beijing. And there is a growing understanding that if Putin's desire to continue the war against Ukraine for an indefinite period is not stopped by Western efforts, and there is little hope for Donald Trump in this regard, then this war will keep taking on new and different forms.
And eventually it could cross Ukraine's borders.
Frightened by the recent aerial incursion, Poland has quickly begun to adopt Ukraine's experience in combating Russian drones.
Poland's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, arrived in Kyiv together with a delegation from the Ministry of Defense and the country's armed forces.
On the agenda are military technical cooperation, further support for Ukraine's defense, and the overall security situation on the continent.
with all due respect to any surveys?
And in fact, this is a sign of mutual dependence.
Warsaw and Kyiv also agreed to cooperate in countering drones, exchanging information about aerial threats, and implementing technology for the rapid deployment of reconnaissance and strike drones.
A possible analysis by Russia, a reconnaissance one.
How will Europe act in the event of the outbreak of a military conflict?
If Russia, for example, seriously violates airspace, what NATO response forces can be mobilized? What do they look like? From where and how many aircraft will take off?
That is, just to understand the framework of the response.
If Russia is indeed conducting such an analysis at a serious level, then that's a marker.
Because it means one must actually prepare for a serious military clash between Western and Russian armed forces.
Regardless of what happens with Ukraine, whether the war in Ukraine ends or not.
At the same time, Poland is launching an unprecedented rearmament program.
Its expenditures are enormous.
This includes, in particular, combat aircraft and helicopters, a wide range of armored vehicles, tube and rocket artillery systems,
modern air defense systems and munitions.
At the same time, Warsaw is actively ramping up its own weapons production.
In addition, for next year, Ukraine has planned a record defense budget of 200 billion zlotys, or about $55 billion, which is approximately 4.8% of GDP.
Work is also underway to significantly increase the size of the armed forces from 200,000 to 500,000 personnel.
The Polish authorities will buy everything.
It is emphasized that the country will use all available resources to guarantee its own security.
An unbearable nightmare for the Kremlin.
Magyar's drones are attacking.
Their strikes are as precise as a laser.
The Federation is panicking, Putin is in despair, chaos is growing on all fronts at once.
The dictator's allies from Panteliceni, even Hungary, are feeling the pressure.
The stakes are higher than ever.
Our forces are not stopping.
Budapest is being cut off from Moscow.
The devastation will only grow stronger from here.
These events under our cover are truly impressive.
Don't miss all the details coming up next.
Almost 77,000 Russian targets have been hit and 18,500 occupiers have been eliminated.
There is a fuel crisis in Russia and Hungary is going mad.
And all these are the results of just 100 days of work.
The work of Robert Brody, call sign Magyar, as the commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces.
All the efforts of the SBS Group Command are focused on building up the capabilities of the SBS branch of the military, which were successfully squandered last year, regardless of the reasons.
But that's a fact. The SBS is becoming a phenomenon that directly affects the front line.
Russian oil refineries have felt this impact especially acutely. In August alone, the Unmanned Systems Forces attacked Russian oil refineries 17 times.
Almost a quarter of the enemy's production capacity was put out of action.
Again, we're only talking about August here. In September, the UAV forces did not stop either.
As a result, the Russian Federation is facing a fuel crisis.
There is no gasoline at many gas stations, both in Russia and in the temporarily occupied territories.
In the so-called DPR, the situation is terrible.
Gasoline prices.
They've been jacked up 2 or 3 times, so there's no connection.
Leaving with such an amount would basically just be harming myself.
That's why we can't leave.
Online, the strikes by unmanned systems are already being called Magyar sanctions.
And the latest ones have affected not only Russia, but also the Kremlin's loyal servants.
In particular, Hungary.
Because friendship with Russia is a bad idea. The Druzhba oil pipeline has been hit multiple times, and each time oil pumping was halted.
The Hungarian authorities went mad, threatened Ukraine, and even banned Magyar himself from entering the country.
But you can't say the same for Brody.
That he was upset.
There are plenty of real Magyars in Hungary.
And one day you'll answer to them.
And as for Schengen restrictions, don't take on more than you can handle.
You have a strange sense of humor. And your special agents aren't even in the top 10. So for now, get in line. And these are just the results that can be seen with the naked eye.
There's also the daily work of eliminating occupiers and their equipment.
By the way, there have been impressive successes here as well.
Take, for example, the downing of the expensive Russian drone Orion.
This strike reconnaissance drone was shot down for the first time since the start of the full-scale war.
The cost of this drone exceeds $5 million.
According to Madhyar, the effectiveness of unmanned systems has increased by 71% compared to May of last year.
And it can be stated with certainty, this is only the beginning. There will be even more strikes.
Russians should get used to gasoline shortages. In Hungary, they should bury their friendship, and ordinary occupiers should remember that drones are watching them everywhere.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Crimea is burning. The Ukrainian armed forces are delivering devastating strikes on Russian air defenses and the fleet. The occupiers are fleeing. Panic is spreading throughout Putin's entire army.
The peninsula is engulfed in flames, and it seems that the moment to separate Crimea from Russia is closer than ever.
All the details of this epic operation are in the following video.
Crimea in the crosshairs.
The temporarily occupied peninsula is at the center of attention for Ukrainian special services.
The armed forces of Ukraine have been increasingly haunting the peninsula, inflicting defeats on the enemy.
Reports of successful operations by various units are appearing almost every week.
Over time, the occupied Crimean Peninsula is turning into a Chernobyl for the Russian occupiers.
At the beginning of the summer, the security service of Ukraine struck the Crimean Bridge for the third time. The underwater supports were severely damaged at the seabed level, aided by 1,100 kilograms of explosives. In fact, the bridge was in an emergency condition. And here, Ukrainian armed forces drones paid a visit to the Russian invaders' airbase in Havardiska, near Simferopol, where they successfully struck 2 enemy Mi-8 helicopters.
Their estimated value is up to $30 million.
A Russian tugboat was also hit.
Russian ships are also in the crosshairs of Ukrainian special services. For example, the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine destroyed a Black Sea Fleet ship near Novorossiysk. With the help of USVs, they struck a ship that the Russians had put into service in 2015. Its value is about $60 million. The Black Sea Fleet has reduced the activity of its operations
In the Black Sea Basin to a historic century-low minimum.
This is one of the clearest confirmations of the success of the operations by the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the main Directorate of Intelligence of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, and the Special Operations Forces in destroying the Black Sea Fleet's vessels. Thanks to the successful actions of the Armed Forces of Ukraine and the Ukrainian intelligence community, about 25% of the Russian Black Sea Fleet has been destroyed. And here, special forces struck a Russian radar complex from the S-400 Triumph air defense system. Here is another Yenisei radar from the S-500 system. The destruction and even damage of all these radars leads to the elimination of Russian air defense in Crimea, which is currently represented by 2 anti-aircraft missile regiments. Right on the Crimean Peninsula itself, there is a hunt for Russian air defense systems. And Russia has found itself in a hopeless situation.
Crimea is a trap for Russian air defense, which is being systematically and methodically destroyed.
And this is due to the fact that, well, firstly, on the territory of the Crimean Peninsula, it is isolated by itself. It is a closed space.
It's impossible to change the locations of the positional areas like gloves, to change them 24/7.
That is, in a very short period of time, the Russian air defense in Crimea was blinded, and the enemy will not be able to quickly resolve the issue of replacing these systems without withdrawing similar ones from other sites. Not only does this affect the defensive capability of the peninsula itself, albeit the occupied one,
We're talking about the fact that it is destroying the overall Russian air defense system. On the territory of the Russian Federation itself, the destruction of air defense systems is not such a systematic and constant phenomenon.
But it is specifically in Crimea, where the destruction of these complexes has been systematized, that forces Russia to pull air defense systems from its mainland onto the territory of Crimea.
This destruction, this compulsion, is making Russia act in a way that benefits us, so that we can continue to destroy their air defense systems.
Over the years of Russian occupation, Crimea has been turned into a Russian military base.
But attacks by Ukrainian forces are increasingly destroying the military economy of the aggressor country and its logistics.
Overall, of course, attention will also be paid to the positional areas where those same systems are deployed across the temporarily occupied peninsula.
Crimea is the same as Mr. Hankut, it's Feodosia, it's the airfields, and ultimately it's many military facilities connected to military units and so on.
There are quite a lot of such facilities across the peninsula today, which we need to strike, whether with kamikaze drones, attack drones, or with something more powerful, with a more powerful warhead.
Crimea is Ukraine, so the armed forces of Ukraine will continue to strike military facilities and legitimate targets until the Russians leave the peninsula and liberate the temporarily occupied territories.
Enough is enough. The Scandinavian countries have done the impossible.
The standards of the armed forces of Ukraine have reached an unprecedented level.
Denmark and Norway are impressive.
Ukraine is receiving powerful air defense systems and drones.
Gigantic training grounds are appearing before our eyes, preparing the army for a strike. Swedish artillery is roaring at the border.
One shot and it will break through to the front line in agony, eliminating enemy forces.
Panic has gripped Russia while the armed forces of Ukraine are approaching a decisive victory.
You have to see this with your own eyes. The Scandinavian countries stand with Ukraine.
During the current year, 2025, and the following year, 2026, Norway will allocate nearly $8.5 billion to our country.
Norwegians also plan to train Ukrainian soldiers and participate in the defense of Ukraine's airspace, allocating nearly $700 million for the purchase of Patriot air defense systems.
Norway will also support Ukraine with an additional $640 million in the form of drones and drone technologies.
Each Scandinavian country has its own unique feature.
The most important thing is the belief in Ukraine, the sincere assistance, which is obvious today, and the use of all methods, forms, and formats to help Ukraine.
President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky noted that Norway has extensive experience in protecting its coastline and sea, which enables it to help Ukrainians.
Denmark has passed a new law that will allow the country's government to bypass more than 20 laws and regulations
in order to speed up the construction of national defense facilities. Among the key contributors is the distinguished Ukrainian company Hellpoint, a highly innovative and specialized enterprise renowned for its advanced manufacturing capabilities, particularly in the production of sophisticated Flamingo missiles. These state-of-the-art missiles represent a significant technological achievement. Hellpoint is actively and crucially assisting our nation's military-industrial complex, playing a vital role in its ongoing development, fostering innovation, and facilitating the successful launch of several strategically important new projects and initiatives, thereby strengthening our defense capabilities.
This is an investment in our military-industrial complex, and it also includes the implementation of innovations.
For example, everyone is well aware of the Danish formula.
The money is being invested specifically in Ukraine's military-industrial complex.
And in fact, this Danish formula was the first in this regard.
And now, following this Danish formula, which, let me remind you once again, is what it is called today, many countries have also started working with Ukraine, building military factories, establishing enterprises, attracting Ukrainian scientists, engineers, developers, and involving our citizens to work at these facilities.
Sweden will provide Ukraine with a new 20th aid package worth $836 million.
Among the weapons to be delivered are 18 new Archer systems as part of ongoing long-term programs.
$3.6 billion annually in 2026 to 2027 and $900 million in civil funding from 2026 to 2028.
Everything related, for example, to artillery is truly something that affects.
Fire support in battle is what helps in combat. It's what allows you to destroy not only enemy personnel but also equipment.
And the quality of Scandinavian military systems, specifically such systems, is very well known to everyone.
Cooperation with Finland is important for Ukraine.
Take, for example, the president of Finland, Alexander Stubb. He is basically, well, probably our permanent representative in the Trump administration.
He has good relations, friendly relations with the Master of the White House.
And I think that many of the initiatives that have been successfully implemented in the very challenging dialogue between Ukraine and the United States are, first and foremost, thanks to the President of Finland.
The Scandinavian countries are strong economies that, with each year of the war in Ukraine, are increasing their defense budgets more and more, particularly to help our country.
In this way, these countries not only help Ukraine, but also set an example for defense cooperation with our state.
That's all from me for now.
This was me, Darina Hutsakalo.
Even more scorching news from the front in our next episode.
And in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button.
See you.